Let's go, Dad.
2 boats.
These are not dirty.
Pick which one you want.
Papa.
Because, listen, whoever boat wins gets a prize. So make sure you got the right boat. Put yours in. Okay, go.
I want to turn that. Go on.
No, it's just going in circles.
No. Yes.
Ooh, wait till you get to the end of the show to see what happens when one of those kids doesn't get a prize. In this episode of Toy Teardown, I'll be pulling apart these Zuru Microboats. These cool little boats shoot around your bath and go in reverse when they hit the side. Let's see what makes them tick. Okay, a little bit more on these little boats before I start pulling them apart. They have got a little motor inside them which spins this propeller. It's got a little rudder so you can make it turn into circles if you want to. A button on the front so when it's running in the water it hits that and then goes in reverse. So the cool thing about that is they've got this extra little curved bit on the bottom, so when the propeller flows the water backwards the boat sort of goes like this and then goes forward again. So of course if it didn't have that it would just be going back and forward and being pretty pointless. The other thing is these 2 little dots here, which are actually like little rubber contacts. As soon as they measure any continuity across them, it starts the motor up. If you hold them down, I'm not sure if you can hear that, but it stops every sort of second and a bit to make a sample just to see if it's still in the water or not, and if it's out of the water, shuts it off. It's got a little hole there. I'm not sure what that's for, but we'll find out when we pull it apart. Underneath here, 3 little button cells to power it. When it does get in the water and it's in constant contact with the water, it runs the motors for 2 minutes. So they'll do the same thing. They just run flat out for 2 minutes and then they stop. I guess to conserve a bit of battery. So it's only got those little button cell batteries in there. So if the thing went continuously, there would be you would burn out the batteries pretty quick. And 2 minutes is pretty much the attention span, well, for my kids anyway. But they just pull it out of the water and put it back in again, and it's all go. It's a pretty good plan because we've had batteries. We got these at Christmas 3 months ago, and batteries are still good as. They're brilliant. So what I wanted to do to start with is this is a pretty good way to make it turn around and go forward again, but I wonder what kind of effect it has on the flat out speed of the boat. So I'm going to put this in the bath and see how fast it goes forward, and then I'm going to cut it off or grind it down with a Dremel and then see if it actually affects the speed or not, and then after that we'll pull her apart and see what's going on the insides. So I ground off the little curvy bit to make it go in reverse in a corner, and it still seems to do that function without any problem. So I'll need to go to the video just to see which one actually goes faster. It was a bit like herding cats, getting them to go in a straight line. It's the slightest change in this rudder and it just curves off straight away. So it's very it's very fine tuned that, but like I said, the slightest little inkling off and it's going around and doing it straight away. So let's check out the video and just see which one was the fastest. Yep, so the modified boat definitely went faster than the unmodified boat. Difference being that the unmodified boat, when it came backwards, it did a nice even curve and then shot off in the other direction. Modified boat came back and sort of hit the wall and then shot off wherever it liked. It hasn't happened every time though. Sometimes the modified boats come around and done a nice Knight Rider flip and shot off in the other direction. There's probably a few other things I could do to the bottom of this to make it faster, but I think we'll just pull it apart and see what's happening on the insides. Alright, let's try and get this fella apart a little bit more. We've only got the one screw here and just the 3 button cells. I can't really stress enough about keeping these little button cells away from the kids. they're really bad news. You need to treat them like arsenic, even if you're just putting them on the bench for a couple of seconds. Just don't take your eyes off them, because once they get in the body, they do terrible things. So just be mindful that you just don't leave those laying around. It looks like the battery cavity is actually watertight, so if water does get in there, it's not going to do much damage. And it's got a rubber O-ring on here, so it should keep the water out. But if it doesn't, at least it's not going to wreck the whole boat. You can just dry it out and chuck some silicone in there to keep it sealed. So for me to go any further, I'm going to have to cut across the edge here. It's going to be the end of it for this boat, unfortunately, but it's all in the name of science. So we'll cut the top off and have a look and see what the magic is. Unfortunately, there's no polite way to get this boat apart. I've just used the Dremel and cut around the edges there, and it's just totally sealed across the top. So I'm going to have to get like a saw or something and cut it right across the top. You can just see on the inside, I might not be able to see it, but there's a circuit board there which obviously controls everything, and there's that little wire which goes back to the motor, and the button just pushes. It's just two prongs going straight onto the circuit board there. The mystery of this hole, I'm guessing water must go in there and it's got to drain out somewhere, so that's what that's for. But before I completely decimate the boat, I thought I'd just show you what I've found so far, just in case I completely wreck it. So we'll go to stage 2 and try and chop the top off there. Okay, so we've got Mr. Side Cutters out and went to town on this poor little boat, and we'll just cut the whole top off. I mean, there's no way I can get that off without destroying the boat, so that's just going to hang around there for a while. Over here, the switch, these two metal prongs basically just go across and down, and there's no particular switch, it's just the spring, a little spring inside which springs the switch back and forward. It's upside down at the moment, but it's made out of metal, so as soon as it pushes those contacts, it forms a real simple switch. So as soon as it senses anything across there, mainly the springs, the boat goes in reverse. We'll pop it out. It's just a little coily spring. It's a bit bigger there, so it sits inside this little keyway here with the actual button itself, and goes back to the circuit board, makes a connection to go in reverse. And you see the wires here are going back around to the motor. So I'll try and get the circuit board out without doing too much damage, and see if we can work out what the inner workings are of the boat. And yes, this hole is just a drain for water. This little grommet, it's rubber, so there's very little chance of any water actually getting in there, which is pretty cool. Okay, I'm getting the thick of it now. At the back we've got a little weight, which is probably why the boat, when it goes through the water, it's sort of got a bit down as it slides across. I guess it's just to keep the propeller down and fully submerged. Okay, so here's what's left. It's the circuit board. It's got a little chip on board circuit there. Can't do much with that. You might be able to grind the top off and have a look, but we're not going to learn anything. Down the bottom here, there's these little exposed metal tabs, and they would sit down on here like that and squish down these rubber contacts. I assume in the factory these would have been quite long, and they would have just pulled them through, then cut them off. And of course the pressure of that holding it down stopped the water from leaking in. The motor, the vitals on that is, it's about 12 millimeters long. The shaft is about 10 millimeters long, and it's about 6 millimeters wide. You can't really see any markings on it. It's got a little logo on the back there, which doesn't mean much to anyone. Well, it doesn't mean much to me anyway. So we'll hook it up to a battery. I've just got my battery cells connected here, and I've got my multimeter. I've got my Dick Smith multimeter. I got this before they started selling hair curlers and barbecue utensils, and we'll try and measure just how much current this beastie draws when it's running. If I hook up the contacts, oops, yeah, the motor's spinning. We'll put the propeller back on so we can see what's actually happening. So if I touch those contacts, away the motor goes. So let's see how much current this whole thing draws. So about, well, these batteries are pretty dead, so it'd probably pull at least 10 milliamps. See the startup current is, I'm not going to show you, but it went right off the, so about 10 milliamps when the motor's running. Even when this is off and out of the water and not doing anything, it's always got a voltage on the probes, so it's always using voltage. It's, yeah, those batteries are really dead. So it's always using got the voltage on here regardless, so if you left it for years the battery would just die, but it's using it to sense any change, so when it hits the water or whatever, that's when it decides to turn the motor on. I'm not sure how well it's going to come out on the camera, but just there is a little chip, and that's pretty much the equivalent of that. Just an integrated circuit, but obviously it's got to be a lot cheaper to build something like that. Okay, not much point torturing this little boat any further. It's not going to give us any more secrets. What I have done is I've pulled all the components off the circuit board, and this is what it looks like. What we can deduce from this is that it ran an 8-pin micro. I can figure out maybe what half a dozen of those pins did. So it'll be power, ground, sense of the motor, turn the motor on, sense the water and the front switch. The rest of those pins might have been for like a timing circuit, as it does have to count up to 120. And in a future episode I think we'll make a similar sort of boat, but using a PIC micro, so we can understand exactly what's required to make something like this work. That's it for this episode of Toy Teardown. If you'd like to see me tear more toys down, hit subscribe. Also, I know you're all hanging around to see what happened in that boat race, so here it is.
Come on, Squid. Go that way, go that way. Yeah!
Oh, was that yours?
Yeah, that was mine. The white one.
Oh, so
I won!
you won the prize.
Download the prize.
Dylan doesn't really know, so that's alright.